Tom Bilyeu went from working extremely hard at something he actually wasn't interested in to growing a business he actually was passionate about, Quest, that ended up being the fastest growing company in North America at that time. And today I'd like to talk about 5 lessons he learnt. So the first thing is that you really want to make sure that you do what you're passionate about. The struggle is guaranteed, but the success isn't. He always was focused on simply becoming extremely rich, which led to him working in a job he didn't actually really like. Because he was working so hard in a job that he didn't enjoy, he became extremely grumpy, and at some point his wife Lisa had to pull him aside and warn him that he needed to stop doing this because it was ruining their marriage, because he was so grumpy, which is why he then went to starting his business Nutrition Quest, which he was extremely passionate about because he grew up in a morbidly obese family and he basically saw one of his relatives eat himself to death. And because he wanted to help his family, he got into nutrition and started making these nutrition bars because he had this purpose of helping the ones he cared the most about. And then the second one is also related to passion. Most people think that we have to kind of find our passion, that we have to somehow go search for something, and someday we will miraculously find that passion by accident. But Tom Bilyeu points out that you don't actually find your passion. It's actually rather the case that you develop your passion, that you try things. It's very difficult to be passionate about something you don't know anything about yet. You can only be passionate once you've tried for a while and notice that you actually enjoy that thing. And especially in the first phase of learning a new skill, it's going to be very, very difficult. So you definitely want to make sure that you go past that phase where you get all these negative results because you're doing something in which you haven't had any experience, any practice, so that you then notice once you have more or less skills enough to see whether you actually enjoy that or not, to see how passionate you are about that. And then the third tip would be that he very often emphasizes that he thinks the most important thing in life actually comes down to how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, and that we should basically base all our decisions on how we want to feel about ourselves. And then the fourth tip would be that you want to make sure that you build what he calls anti-fragile confidence. So basically basing your confidence on being a learner. And the reason why this type of confidence is anti-fragile is that anytime someone points out a weakness of yours, your confidence isn't crashed. Instead, you can actually build your confidence even more because you can prove to the other person just how much of a learner you are by actually improving on that weakness of yours. Because if you, for example, base your confidence on being talented, then as soon as you notice that you aren't necessarily as good as you thought you were, you're going to feel very bad about yourself. And there's always going to be someone in your space that's a little better than you. And the experience Tom Bilyeu had with that, he used to have a very fixed mindset. And his fixed mindset was mostly around the fact that he wanted to feel smart, that he didn't want anything in life to disprove that he was smart. And he noticed that this actually led him to applying for jobs that were way beneath what he was able to do, just because in the job interviews he so desperately wanted the other person to somehow say, "Why the heck are you applying for this job? You're way too smart for this." Just because he wanted to kind of have this external approval. He basically noticed by doing that he was spiraling to worse and worse jobs that weren't actually challenging him at all. And also another way in which his fixed mindset back then hurt him very much. And I think this is the experience he talks about in which he was like the most depressed or the most unhappy with himself. He got into the film school he wanted, and at first he managed very well, and therefore he actually thought he was very talented, but then in his senior thesis did a very poor job because he thought he was talented and then noticed that he wasn't that made him slide into a depression. Now, as he emphasises, he wasn't clinically depressed, that's a whole different matter, but I think that was the time that he felt the most depressed in his life. And by thinking of himself as a learner, he actually managed to build confidence again. Basically, anti-fragile confidence is all about having a growth mindset, priding yourself on your ability to grow and not on any certain talent. And then the fourth thing is that he wants to believe that human potential is nearly limitless, because it's definitely not totally limitless. Unfortunately, we are not blank slates, but as he likes to emphasize very much, he himself definitely wasn't a born entrepreneur. He was extremely lazy, and nowadays he's extremely disciplined, very hardworking. I think he works about, he said 96 hours a week, and if he can manage to change himself so much, he doesn't see why other people shouldn't be able to do so. And this also relates to the growth mindset. Now, if you want to know more about the growth mindset, you can watch this video here.